That's great. That's great.
Going forward, there's one thing I really want to touch on, the word responsibility. In the book, and I'm sure people have heard this before, but responsibility is really just a compound word of responsibility. Can either of you take a stab or what that means to you or to us as music educators?
I'll jump in here and refer to a quote by Viktor Frankl, the psychologist and Holocaust survivor who wrote a seminal work called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that work, he shares something that's really valuable for us to reflect on, which is that between stimulus and our response, there's a space. And it's in that space where we have the ability to choose our response. And that is so important. We tend to develop habits of reaction. And they begin from a very early age. And they can be taught to us by how we're parented and how our peer group acts. And we get positive and negative reinforcement based on our particular reaction. We tend to react the same way that the people around us react, and it's a learned response. But you can change your habit of reaction. Maybe something continually happens and it really irritates you. Well, that thing's not going to change. The only thing that can change is yourself and your own choice of how you choose to respond to it. And so what it is, we can choose a new habit. Well, how do you create a new habit? It takes effort, intention, and deliberate practice to develop a new habit to change our response. And there are certain things we can do to help us in that moment. Imagine that you listen to something on the news or somebody's voice just sends you off, and you know that every time you hear that, you have a negative response to it. Well, that doesn't do you any good. It doesn't allow you to be the best version of yourself. So employ a new strategy. Maybe take a deep breath for just a moment. Just create your own space. A deep breath through your nose and out your mouth. Just pause. Step back, try to step outside of your body and just be aware, oh, this is what happens to me every time. I'm going to choose a different response. I'm going to focus on something else. I'm going to focus on gratitude. I'm going to focus on joy. I'm going to try to find the goodness in the person who's irritating me and recognize that in the end, we all are essentially human with the same needs. We all need care and compassion in our lives, and perhaps we can be more compassionate towards others rather than irritated. But again, it is a choice. It begins here. It begins within. And we're so used to blaming everything on our external life and saying it's because of them that I'm this way, when really just breathe and choose your response. And that idea has become so important to me as I've developed my own personal practice of mindfulness and meditation and trying to be aware in the moment. It's not always easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I fail over and over and over again. But it begins with being self-aware and recognizing, yes, I do have a choice.
And I would add on to that as well, because I think that's spot on, is this idea of hearing versus listening. A lot of times our response, whether it's in a conversation or whether it's in, maybe you're having a discussion, you go directly to what's on the top of your mind. And so I think letting it simmer, and I like the idea of taking a breath, but really take in what the other person is saying, listen to it, analyze it, and be able to take just a moment and then respond. Because, and whether that's through, whether it's through conversation, whether it's through action, being able to process what you're hearing. I'm going to add a layer in on empathy. Be able to, whenever you're analyzing, whenever you're thinking about it, be sure that you're reflecting on where it's coming from, how it's being delivered. All of those items are really important for you being able to choose. And I think there's a section later on too, where they talk about this freedom of choice. You have the choice of how you're going to respond. And so you take all of this information in, but you have to listen. It can't be a hear and react. It has to be, you take in, you really think about it, and then you respond. And I think, you know, a lot of times you have to, in the end, you're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your reactions. You're responsible for how you connect with others and how you converse, how you communicate. And so really focusing on how you listen, how you communicate, and how you convey that to others, I think is going to be really important as well. So I would say listening and empathy are really, really huge parts of that equation as you're making the choice of how to respond to various stimuli.
And I think that's really important to take that breath, to think and to have that empathy and really decide on how you're going to respond. Oftentimes, especially in today's environment, just across the world, and anything is, and I would say it's very present in just public discourse or in social media. You see this stuff all the time. People just say the first thing that pops on their mind, and that's whatever they've just been conditioned to believe through how they've grown up and the people they've been around. And I think oftentimes, if we were able to just sit and kind of think about it a little bit and have that empathy and try to understand where these differing viewpoints are coming from, that would just help us out as a society as a whole. There's a lot of things going on in this world right now, in this country right now, where people aren't having this response ability. They're just going off stimulus to reaction, and they're not exercising the wonderful trait of humanity that is our self-awareness, and for us to relate to people. So I think just both this concepts of taking initiative and responsibility, as we go into this new school year, especially, there's going to be a lot of people who are very confused, unsure. There's going to be people wearing masks. There's going to be people not wearing masks. It's going to be all sorts of different things. It's just having understanding, having empathy, and just trying to not instantly just snap at whatever first comes to your head, but to take that breath and to think about it.